And welcome back to the Pen and Podcast. I am your host, Pen in Pants, and with me I have the lifter, Eddie. How you doing today, sir?
Lifter. We got to keep a new name every time. I think that would be
I
funny.
tried. I cut his space there. I cut his space.
I know. I thought you were trying to, and then I noticed that. So we got the lifter, the lift master. I don't know what the other ones are, but I like them all.
I think it
So
was the iron pumper. I think I did last
yeah,
time for Jeffrey.
yeah. So okay, yeah. No, I'm doing well. The lifter's doing well today. How are you doing, Zach?
Oh, think I got a little cold. Got
Oh no.
sniffles and congestion. I woke up with a scratchy throat today, and it's gone now. But yeah,
Nice.
no,
Nice.
not nice. Not nice. I don't like that.
Well, hey, you got to look at the positive. You're improving, right?
Okay, yeah. I
Okay,
guess you're right.
that's okay. All right. What have you been doing? What are you doing this week? What have you been playing? What have you been living?
I have been pretty much this whole week was just watching mostly Stranger Things. Like I
Right.
binged the whole show. And the
Nice.
reason why like I got super into it, because like before this I was like just casually watching episode after episode, right? But then at my job, one of the kids was like, put on the Stranger Things song. I was like, what Stranger Things song are you talking about? And it's like the Stranger Things song. He goes, "Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba." I was like, that doesn't help me. And my coworker overheard and was like, okay, he wants you to play on Master of Puppets by Metallica. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what he meant. I was like, oh, is it safe? And he's like, yeah, it's safe. I checked the lyrics.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, bet. And I heard it. That song kicks ass, dude. I've been
Hell yeah,
listening to
dude.
that, and then like I finally got to like the scene where it happened. Oh man,
Yeah.
epic.
That's sick. Hell yeah.
Epic, man. I love that show. Can't wait for season 5. I've also been watching since I finished that Persona 4 Golden, the animation. I have a little update. It finally got into the plot somewhat, but the way, like, the order of it does not follow the game at all. It's weird. Like, I'll see what they're trying to do, but it's just weird how they just don't go in the order of things. But it's the same. Like, one of the producers of the game would produce this anime, so he must know what he's doing. But for game wise, I finally beat the 8th fucking gym leader in Pokemon Ruby. Had to go catch another Pokemon to do it, and even then, I like wiggled my way out like some worm out of there. I should not have won.
What element is he?
It was water.
He's a water gem.
That
Okay.
really fucked me up because he has a Milo tick. It was like level 43, and it really really fucked me up. Yeah,
For real.
got past that.
That's good.
Played a lot of Live Alive. I don't know. Did I say last time? Did I finish the Oonga Boonga story?
Yeah, that's what you told me last time. Yeah.
All right. Well, then this time I went back and I did the near future one, which is pretty much like a Gundam anime kind of trope. It went through like the opening like intro was literally like an anime opening, like chow, right? And
That's cool.
had a bunch of mechs. So it was like very reminiscent
Hell
of just
yeah.
like Gundam stuff. And then finished that. Then today I finished the Wild West chapter. I think that's like I like that chapter. It's favorite. It's doesn't take long. And it's pretty cool. And like, he talks like Arthur Morgan. He's like your mom.
I got tuberculosis.
Yeah, he's got that really deep voice. I was like, oh, bet. All right. And then Curtis and I, our friend Curtis, started the hardest difficulty playthrough in Wasteland 3.
Oh yeah, you guys played that a lot back in the day. I remember.
Yeah, the game's fun because I would have played it not as much, but it's co-op. So that's what really like drove me to like play it with Curtis. I was like, there's no reason not to, right? And pretty much we were on and off of that game for a like whole ass year. Pretty much, we didn't beat the game and its DLC until like a couple months ago, I want to say. And now we started a new playthrough just because there's an achievement of beating it on the hardest difficulty. And Curtis is an achievement whore, and I'm an achievement whore. You know, I just love my stuff. I love my achievements.
Yeah.
That number that means nothing on my Xbox profile. For those who don't know.
The gamer score.
That's right.
It determines how elite of a gamer you are.
Also tells you how much Mountain Dew sperm count I have left.
Dude, it's got to be pretty high at this point.
Eddie, my friend. All right, what did you do this week?
Well, we'll start with gaming because this is a gaming podcast.
I think.
So I kind of finished. I didn't kind of finish. I finished Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I have prepared my final review, and spoiler alert: this is a special Borderlands episode where we will be talking about the most recent Borderlands games, being Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and Borderlands 3. So I will mention that a little bit later, but I did finish that. Me and our friend Ishan started playing Monster Hunter World. The interesting thing that I noticed about that is they offer this, if you have the Iceborne DLC, they offer an armor set from the beginning of the game that basically gets you through the main game very easily. So to be honest, like, it's kind of hard for me to want to play it just because it's so easy with that weapon and that armor set. Yeah. But Ishan keeps telling me, like, you know, if we get past the early game, like, that's when we'll get to the challenge. So I just kind of have to power through it, and I'm looking forward to playing a little bit more. All right. So yeah, Monster Hunter World, fun game. You played it, I think, right?
I played not a lot of it. What I really played was Monster Hunter Rise, and to be honest, that main game, it's probably because I was with, like, you know, Ishan and Carrington, but like, and Liz sometimes. Like, I didn't have, like, typically in a Monster Hunter game, you it takes like 20-30 minutes to beat one monster, right? And then you get its you know, its parts, its claw, hide, stuff like that. And what you would typically do is get the next armor, next best armor set, and then face the next monster. But in my playthrough in Monster Hunter Rise, I did not grind any of the monsters. Maybe like 3 or 4, a handful of times I go back to another monster, only because, like, Carrington would beat him. I beat a monster that Carrington didn't, so we just did that again. But I really didn't have to grind per se, because I don't know. Maybe it's because I was just Ishan, but it's not a super hard game until you get to, like, the end game. I'm pretty much certain, just like how kind of Borderlands is, really.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, Ishan was telling me that he still has yet to beat the final boss in Iceborne, which is the DLC to Monster Hunter World, which is kind of baffling because it's been out for so long. So it must be fucking hard as shit. But who knows? Yeah. Let's see. That's all I've done for gaming this week. Outside of that, I've noticed some really major improvements in my back injury, which I'm super happy with.
That's good.
I am gaining a lot of mobility. I don't get really sore from doing work anymore. And also today, I recorded me squatting, and, like, my mobility is, like, shot through the roof, and it feels really good. So yeah, I'm feeling real hopeful. I still got a long way to go, but I'm feeling really hopeful about that. And then a little milestone with my fitness page. I had one of my videos be the first video to hit 10,000 views, which I'm really proud of. So yeah, so I'm feeling successful with the gym, feeling happy with playing games with the boys, and yeah. So I think we can segue into our main vibe, which is the Borderlands episode 1. We're going to do 2 episodes of this. The first one here is going to be about Borderlands 3 and the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands games, just because they are the most recent, and also because I just finished Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, we thought we would do this. Me and Zach have a really deep connection to this series. We've played it for many, many hours together and grinded a lot of time in it. And we both respect the game and have a lot of friendship built upon it. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And full warning, both of these games will be, if not partially spoiled, fully spoiled, because we have a lot to talk about, and pretty much our experience with it. Eddie and I played a fuck ton of Borderlands. However, if we had to take a pool of like hours together, Eddie's would be 2 times as much more than mine. He was a fanatic of the Borderlands
Absolutely.
before I met him.
Yeah. I when Borderlands 2 came out, I didn't play it, but a few years after, I would say like 2013, 2014, ever since then, all the way up until Borderlands 3 came out, I played that game like very consistently. Like I have so many hours in it. It's probably, I've played it more than any other game that I can imagine. Maybe Destiny would beat it, but I played a horrific amount of Borderlands 2. Um, the pre-sequel I played a lot of. I played quite a bit of 1. 3 and Tiny Tina's are a little bit less, and we'll talk about why. But I'm an incredibly dedicated fan of the early games in the series, and I know a lot about the games. Like I was a Borderlands scholar.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. But yeah. So let's get into it. I think the first thing we'll talk about is Tiny Tina's, because I just finished it.
Let's get that out of the way. Yeah, you just finished it.
Yeah. So kind of begin with we have like different sections here that we're going to talk about, but we're going to start with the gameplay because, as both of us know, the core enjoyment of Borderlands comes from the gameplay.
100%.
That's what we both like. That's what most people like. They do a very good job at Gearbox of creating a consistently entertaining arcade shooter experience, and I still believe that they can pull that off even with these games.
Oh yeah. What is Borderlands, Eddie? Can you tell? I mean, in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, what genre does really that fit in?
I would say we're looking at the sort of RPG, looter shooter, FPS vibe. If I could put it into a box like that, mixed with a little bit of edgy comedic writing, and that's what you get out of Borderlands. It is an incredibly successful game franchise that has been around for a little over a decade now. Borderlands 1 came out in 2009, and it has been very successful title, very well reviewed, world renowned, lots of sales, lots of people love it. But that's what I would describe Borderlands as. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is just the latest installment in that. So they kind of took not a different approach, but like a slightly different approach. But we'll kind of talk about that here in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
But at the core of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, we have the gameplay, obviously. This is going to be, I'm going to kind of compile this all into our review of it. But for sure, gameplay, specifically, we're going to talk about gunplay first, is just as good as it's always been. It's very satisfying. The guns are very creative. There's a lot of different types of weapons, lots of a variety, which I appreciate a lot in an FPS RPG styled game. That's why I've always liked Destiny. The gun system in Fallout 4 was really incredible, but it's going to have a lot of variety in the weapons. That's something I really appreciate about it. So they feel satisfying to use. They are they kind of scratch that little itch in my head. I don't know how to say it. You
Uh-huh.
kind of understand. What do you kind of what does that kind of mean to you? I know you feel the scratch too.
When we're talking about the just like the typical, the what am I trying to say? The the loop, the gameplay loop, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's constantly finding better equipment. You kill one
Right.
enemy, it drops stuff. Oh, this weapon is better than mine. I'm gonna grab it, and it's that same gameplay loop over and over again. It's it has an element of um not like but like a slot machine. Like, oh,
Right.
it's just a constant. Keep getting loot. That's what feeds into the mechanics of the game pretty much, because you don't really stick with the same weapon and gear for on and on. And I know in Tiny Tina's they have there's different kind of weapons. You want to talk
Right.
about, like, because Borderlands is like guns, rocket launchers, assault rifles, SMGs, but Tiny Tina's it's a spin-off from the actual Borderlands series that does more fantasy kind of D&D stuff. So what kind of weapons do you
Right.
see in Tiny Tina's?
Yeah. So the first thing I noticed, one of the first guns that you always get in the Borderlands series is you start with like a base tier rarity, like you call it a common rarity, so
Uh-huh.
like a white. It's labeled with a white color. You start with a pistol. The first thing that I noticed with the guns in Wonderlands is that they are a little bit more fantasy based with the sort of like futuristic gun styles that the other games had. But the white pistol that you start with is it's kind of like more of a crossbow type vibe. So you get like this kind of gun crossbow hybrid thing.
Yeah.
And to be 100% honest, I think they were going for something with that, but I would assume because I've been kind of conditioned to know what a Borderlands weapon feels like, this one felt a little awkward. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel as satisfying. So generally, when I pick up the sort of the crossbow type weapons in the game, I don't really like them. They don't scratch the itch like I was talking about earlier. They just don't
Mm-hmm.
feel as satisfying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you get a lot of guns that have sort of like the crossbow vibe, and then another thing that they did was kind of interesting is instead of like having like all ballistic weapons that shoot projectiles, you have some weapons that shoot like magic, which this I thought was cool.
Yeah.
So like there's some variations of the shotgun specifically that fire like this crystal dust, and it's like a it's something that you fire at the enemies, and it like engulfs a certain amount of area, and it kind of just like flies towards them. So it's like a shotgun in real life, but it kind of moves slower, and it has like a cool little magic look to it. It's kind of interesting. I like that. With some of the automatic like assault rifles and the submachine guns, you get some like interesting projectile styles. Like you have bullets that move in like a wave fashion, so they look
Uh-huh.
like a wave when they're going towards the enemy, which I thought was kind of interesting. But other than that, they kind of stuck to the ballistic stuff. There's some assault rifles that shoot more like the crossbow with the pistol I was talking about earlier.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah,
Did they lean more on like melee weapons this time around?
that's correct. Yeah, yeah. There are this is kind of new for the game. Obviously, melee builds have been viable in previous Borderlands titles, but this game really went for melee weapons in their own like way. So it's not like each class has their own designated melee weapon, but everybody can pick up melee weapons as if they're guns.
Mm-hmm.
So you get different rarities and tiers of melee weapons, which I thought was pretty cool. They don't feel that powerful, but then again, I didn't play a melee class, so they could be, but I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. You talked about classes, so we can segue into that. What different classes are there? Is it other? Did they look viable as in going back to replay them?
Right. So an interesting thing they did with classes in this game, with the way that you kind of choose a character in Wonderlands, it's not traditional to the Borderlands formula. So generally in a Borderlands game, you're going to get, when you create a new game, you start the game and you get like 4 to 6 different characters to choose, and each one of those characters has like a designated ability. In Wonderlands here, we have a sort of like, you create a character, but you can sort of pick any ability you want with it.
Uh-huh.
So what that did for me was really, it made my character that I was playing feel a lot less like they had their own personality. Like it wasn't like I was playing as somebody. It was just like I'm playing as my selection of abilities, which I don't know. It just didn't. It felt too freeform. I really appreciate the character creation that they did with this game, especially with the cosmetic customization.
Yeah.
But with the classes, you can really pick anything, and it's not assigned to the character, so it eliminates a lot of your character's personality, which kind of made me upset. Not upset, but like it kind of made me like, oh, this isn't as fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
In terms of like replayability with the classes, because that personality of the character wasn't attached to the class, it really didn't make me want to play another class.
I see. Yeah. That's how Borderlands is been, and they tried something different, and it sounds to me like they just didn't stick to veteran players like ourselves.
They definitely tried something new, and I appreciate them trying that. But just a few things kind of fell flat, and that would be one of them. One interesting thing I'll give them for the classes, and we'll kind of talk about the skill trees with it. So those of you who don't know, with your respective class in these games, you do get a little set of skills that you can improve as you level up to make you better in certain ways. So one thing that you can do is you can have multiple classes on your character at the same time. So you can like create these little interesting hybrid builds that maximize certain skills that synergize with other skills from a different class, and like you can really create like an interesting stat system for your character, which I really liked. But in terms of like memorability and like replayability, like me wanting to play that again as a different class, it really didn't hit for me.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And we kind of skipped over the we were talking about like the guns and stuff, but how frequent are the rarity of guns that you get? You know, because that was always a question.
So right. So this is something we'll get into with the Borderlands 3 section of the podcast after we finish the Tina.
Yeah.
So, but for this game, the loot rarity felt much better than Borderlands 3.
Interesting.
And in Borderlands 3, we'll talk about this later, but I'll kind of gloss over it. It was way too easy to get the really rare items, and I did not like that. I think some people like that because they like to get the cool stuff really easily, but a lot of enjoyment for me in these types of games is really working to get the really good stuff. And Tiny Tina, this game did a little bit better than Borderlands 3. It, however, did not feel as good as it did in the previous titles. Just because I was still getting these items like on a new playthrough, and it felt a little too simple to get them. Like, oh, I got a legendary, you know what I mean? Like, it happened a little too often. And yeah, it just felt like I had the good stuff too early, and I didn't really have to work for it, so that kind of messed with me. But in terms of guns as well, I kind of missed this section. A big important thing with Borderlands is not only do you have like the ballistic weapons that just shoot projectiles, but you get with the magical stuff that they kind of have in this game, they get a lot of stuff with elemental damage. So elemental damage has always been a really important part of the series, which I think is really cool. But certain elements will damage certain types of enemies more efficiently. So like frost is a little more efficient at hurting the skeleton type enemies, and electricity will kind of damage shields more, and like fire is better against like flesh type enemies and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool. But that's something that's been in the series always, and they nailed the elemental damage again.
Yeah.
So they did that just fine. I'm totally happy with that. But yeah. So other than that, kind of go segueing back into like the character development skill trees side of things. The level cap is level 40. So some of you don't, that doesn't mean anything to you, but I'll kind of explain it. So essentially, when you play through the story, like the main story, you land at about level 30. I was like level 31 when I finished the main story. So those last 9 levels would be from side quests and like little side objectives that you can do. So being level 40, it felt a little too short to get there that quick. For that to be the max level, I was like, okay, that was a little too easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 40 level 40 sounds way too low for a max.
Right. And you can definitely make it hard to get to level 40, but this game did not make it hard to get to level 40. That was a very common occurrence I noticed with Wonderland, is that this game is so easy. Like it felt like a game for very young children. Like I think it's rated teen, so that's fair, but like this game felt too easy, coming from a person who has been a diehard fan of this series. And some of the reason I was a fan is because it's a fucking hard game sometimes. And yeah, I really missed that one on this game. I'll go into the boss fight specifically with the difficulty. There aren't that many large boss fights in the game that I ran into. There's a few, but I would say, yeah, exactly. I agree. Like, a lot of, people who play games, that one of the most satisfying things is to beat a big boss battle, like a big fucking angry, mean motherfucker that's gonna like beat your fucking ass, and you finally beat them. What I experienced is I had a lot of bosses, but they weren't like menacing or intimidating, or they felt challenging, or there was any sort of like reward, or like it felt like I really wanted to like beat them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
know what you mean.
Yeah. So I did. So in the end game, we'll talk about this later. Also, the end game, there is an option to like do these arena fights, and it's like how you get the best loot in the game. I did the boss rush one where you fight all the bosses in like an hour or whatever. And even then, experiencing all the bosses in one go, I was like, this is very dissatisfying. Like it was not very engaging, not very rewarding, not very challenging.
I see. That's disappointing. Even like a boss rush, like those are supposed to be like really fun,
Yeah, no, because you can really feel the challenge, because like that you've surpassed all these challenges on your way up to, beating the first boss the first time is really hard, and beating the second boss is really hard, and then by the time you get to the end of the game, you're really good at beating all the bosses. So a boss rush is like a kind of a monumental moment where you're like, damn, like I can beat all these really hard tasks that were so hard for me in like 1 hour, and I'm really good now. And
yeah,
I didn't really get that, and that was kind of a shame. But we'll end on a little positive note for the gameplay side of things. One more thing with like the general gameplay, the movement and the pacing is still fantastic. They really nailed the gunplay. So like moving your character within the battle feels very smooth. It's snappy. the movement of your head and the aiming feels very natural. It doesn't feel clunky. There's no choppiness to it. It just feels good to kind of move through the world. It's very fast paced, speedy. Lots of old school Borderlands fans will appreciate that, and I think they did a very good job with that. So, yeah.
Okay. And overall gameplay section, what would you rate Tiny Tina's in terms of gameplay?
Well, I can put like a number to it in each one of these. So like I'll put a Y next to, we're in the Google Doc as we speak. So I'll put a little Y next to all the things that I liked, and then I'll put a little N next to the ones I don't, and then I'll kind of calculate it in my head.
Yeah. And while he does that,
that's good.
Our next section of Tiny Tina's will be talking about the story, because I've definitely heard things about this story that I would like to talk about, because it sounds so dumb. But any gameplay section would you recommend?
I'm gonna give it a 5. It's not bad, but it's not good. They landed the core gameplay, which is like the shooting and the movement, but the character, like making your character a real badass and fighting really hard enemies, they really missed it. So
okay,
yeah.
I from what you told me, because for these you don't know, because I wasn't like talking much, I didn't play Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Eddie did, and so I just wanted to include this because it's still a Borderlands game. It just doesn't have the name in it. And we move on to the story. Eddie,
yes,
give us.
So
what is this story about?
So the story is, there's a main plot and there's sort of a subplot. So the main plot is based within the Dungeons and Dragons context. So if you guys don't know, Dungeons and Dragons is a popular tabletop role-playing game that people play together, where you kind of role play as a character and you go through like a fantasy world. Now, Borderlands brought this into their universe as a little funnily named ripoff called Bunkers and Badasses, which I think is hilarious. So what you're playing through in this game is you are playing as a character in a game of Bunkers and Badasses that is run by characters in the Borderlands world, which I think is a fantastic idea. I love it. They did it before in Borderlands 2 as a DLC, something that they experimented with, and it landed really well. And I love that they tried to do it again. And I think that they really captured that idea again, which I love. So that's sort of the basis for the game. You're playing as a character being role played as a person in the real Borderlands world. And that's sort of the main plot. You're going through this world, and you are sort of like you're called the Fate Maker, which is like a corny like fantasy name, but like you're the person in charge of changing the fate of the universe and whatever. The main plot is you're kind of going through this intro sequence, and everything is all handy dandy, and then this big evil guy murders the queen, and oh my god, everything's bad. We have to fix this and save the queen and all this stuff. So basically the main gist of it is it's a very basic story, but because of its context, I think it works. The basic gist is you're just trying to go kill the big bad guy in the tower and save the day, which, you know, classic story, classic D&D story, Dungeons and Dragons story that people have done before. So that works well. Yeah. Now, however, the subplot is where you get a little bit more meat, a little bit more emotion, a little bit more meaning. So we'll go more into this during the Borderlands 2 episode, but in Borderlands 2, you have Tiny Tina, who is a young girl who is a recurring character in the series. She is like she's an interesting character because she's very violent and very independent and strong, but she is also a little girl at the same time, so she's very vulnerable. She can be put in danger, but she has this kind of badass side to her, which it's a cool little duality personality, which I love. But in Borderlands 2, her sort of, I would say, role model or caregiver, Roland, who is a very important character in the early games, is killed. And this leaves her feeling very alone, abandoned. And that's sort of Tina's biggest emotional challenge that she goes through, is learning to be independent and strong without Roland, because Roland was so integral to her development as a child and development to the strong character that she is.
Mm-hmm.
A recurring theme after the death of Roland is Tina feeling very abandoned, and alone and afraid that people will leave her. So the subplot of this game, as you get dialogue from Tina as she's running the D&D game, the Bunkers and Badasses game, is she's worried that the people that are playing with her are going to leave and stop playing. And it kind of, it hits a little bit of an emotional spot, in terms of like, themes of abandonment and feeling alone or feeling scared to lose people or lose friends or something like that. And I think that's a very emotional thing that they hit, and I think they did that well. So yeah, you have sections where Tina is like, "Oh, you guys are gonna keep playing, right? Yeah, like and she's worried, and
Yeah.
so I think that's a very interesting little sub theme, and I think they developed that very well. It's very subtle, and you do have to read into it a little bit, but I love that. I think that's great.
Awesome. And so let's talk about, since you're like unlike previous game Borderlands games, in this game you make your own character, so your character does not talk. Is that right?
So actually, the character does speak, but it is so painfully generic. Like
Oh.
it is. Oh, it.
Oh
This is
no.
this is kind of where we're going to get into the writing. The
Okay.
writing in this game is tragically generic, awkward. Um, I would say, unless we're in that kind of subplot that I mentioned, this game is it really comes off as forced, kind of cringy. The writing is just not good, um, and it's a shame because, if I remember correctly, let me find out who the voice actor was
And
for one of the characters.
is it true? I heard like they just made like too many like way like childish jokes. Like they just totally like segued from what they were about, like just like dark edgy stuff, because it's a dark edgy world. But now it's like just a bunch of poop jokes and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a massive thing that they did so weird. Like Borderlands has been a top tier like comedy writing game in the past, and this game, like, all the jokes come off as forced, very awkward, um, really cringy. Like, it was just like yuck. And the shame is that these characters are voiced by like an all-star cast. Like we
No,
have
really?
Will Arnett as the main villain, and we all know Will Arnett. He's like a very famous comedic
Oh,
actor.
dude.
Wanda Sykes as there's a one of the characters is like this robot lady, and she's like, Wanda Sykes is a famous comedian. She's so funny. She has a fantastic voice, and like, the other side character that you play alongside with is Andy Samberg, who we all know from Saturday Night Live and The
Andy
Lonely Island.
Samberg's in this
I
game?
know. I know. They have a great cast, a fantastic cast, and it's such a shame because they did, just like whoever wrote it, it just doesn't work. It's so it's a shame. These voice actors that they picked are such good choices because they can really deliver, but the lines that they were delivering were really painful.
Ah, dude, you just hate to see that, right? Because like,
Dude, I
oh
know.
fuck, you can have all right voice acting, but if the writing's good, then it makes up for it. But it can't go the other way around. It just
Exactly.
can't.
Yeah. So this, to me, it really diminished the likableness of the characters. Obviously, Tina is written very well because Tina is a character that I kind of understand the personality of. She's been developed in my mind already.
Yeah.
But these new characters, Andy Samberg plays Captain Valentine. Wanda Sykes plays, I think it's pronounced Freddy or something like that. Will Arnett plays the main enemy, the Dragon Lord, and it is, yeah, they have great voices, but Jesus Christ, the writing is really bad. So the characters, they're just not likable. They're not even very well developed, other than Tina. And obviously, the character you play as is, you create it, and it's sort of like hyper generic. So there's no development in your own personality, and it just feels like you're playing as, like a piece of plastic walking through a game. It's kind of painful. So yeah, that'd be about the characters. For the villain, in the main plot, Will Arnett's character, Dragon Lord, is essentially, it's kind of deep, where the Dragon Lord is a character that Tina previously created in another one of her Bunkers and Badass games.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like sort of trapped in the world, and he feels that he is destined to be evil and all this stuff. And there's a little bit of a subplot in that, in terms of like being left to a destiny that you don't want and stuff like that. But the villain he's not very intimidating. He doesn't have much meat to him. He just kind of feels like a half done attempt at a evil bad guy. So yeah. And then we can go into like side characters. It get all the same stuff. They're not likable. They're not developed. They're just kind of meh.
Kind of there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, disappointing because past Borderlands, like the early Borderlands games, had really great characters, and
absolutely
have to see it. Hopefully, like they learn, like improve, but we will definitely see. So we can. So yeah, overall story. Would it be fair to say that story is trash, poo poo? Do not play.
Pretty bad. Yeah. The only thing that I can give this game credit for is they continue the Bunkers and Badasses thing, which I think is really cool. And then that subplot with Tina, with the abandonment issues and stuff like that, I think that's a really, we're bringing the story into a real world context, and it can feel relatable. I like that. I think if the writing was better and the characters were developed more and they had more personality, it would make it a lot better. But story, like overall, I'd say like a 3 out of 10.
Ooh, you really hate to see that one. 3 out of 10. Do not play this for the story, ladies and gentlemen.
No, do not. unless you can really deeply relate to the abandonment issues, which all of us can. But that'd be the main attraction. It is an emotional story in that way, if you can really look at that part. But
would you say that this game's story too much kind of tailored to the younger audience, because like poop jokes and stuff like that? I mean, who can make like poop jokes funny? Like if your audience is not literally like 6 years old, how can you make poop jokes kind of funny? But like I feel like they tailored too much into it to younger audience, but also tried to retain an adult audience. It just didn't mix well.
I think you're right. I think that's a good description of it. The other thing too is, even if I was younger, I still don't think I would laugh at some of the jokes in the game. So I don't know, man. Yeah, but I think that would sum up the story. Go into the art section, kind of like what the game looks like, how it performs. Mm-hmm. We all, well, we don't all know this, but Borderlands is known for its unique art style. Some people say, "Oh, it's not cel shaded," but it looks like it looks pretty fucking cel shaded to me. So, Borderlands kind of takes from the. Sorry. Oh, sorry, you're good. Borderlands takes from a very unique kind of comic booky style. So, cel shading, for those of you who don't know, it's a kind of an animation technique in which everything is kind of outlined in a way. You could say, like in comic books, things are outlined with really stark, heavy black lines. It
Yeah.
kind of makes things really pop out and they look intense and
Ink.
everything is very distinct. Um, that's something that is still here. It's not done as intensely as it was in the previous titles, but the cell shading and the sort of comic book style is still incredibly prevalent in this title, which I love. Fantastic. It looks cool. It's very fun for my eyes to look at all the colors. So, but yeah. So I like the cell shading. I like the color. The game's really sharp. It looks real crisp. There's no like
Yeah.
graphical fidelity issues. Um, it's very obviously running on the same engine as Borderlands 3. There might have been tweaks or updates to it, but it feels like I'm playing Borderlands 3. So yeah, it performs exactly like the last game, but what game doesn't do that nowadays? Every COD feels the same for the last 10 years, so whatever.
Yeah. Pretty
Um,
much nailed
I'm
it.
okay. Yeah. I'm okay with the engine playing like that because I like it. Um, so if you're looking for like a different feel from Borderlands 3, you're not going to get it. If you're looking for a different feel from an early Borderlands game, you're definitely going to get it. It definitely feels a little different than the old ones, but it's still at the core feels pretty much the same. And then like something I really value with the game outside of just what it looks like is how it performs on my console. So I'm not PC Master Race, so I don't have the
You fucking
monster
console
performance.
pleb.
I'm a console loser pleb, but so I the console it is trapped in the time that it is released in, so I can't like upgrade it or anything. But this game runs perfectly. There's two settings in the game. You can do the performance setting or like the graphical setting. The graphical setting makes it look a little bit nicer, but you lose some frames per second. And then the performance setting is going to make it run a little bit smoother, but it might not be as pretty looking or crisp. I play on the performance setting because I like it to be smooth rather than pretty. I don't like playing choppy games. They feel awkward and annoying. But I got plenty of clear gameplay, no frame drops, no weird lighting bugs or anything like that. It played really well. I don't know if 60 frames all the time, but like it played really well. I play on the Series X, by the way, if you guys want to know. Yeah, no frame drops, nothing awkward, plays smooth. The game looks fine. So yeah, that's what I would say for that section.
Did
Art style overall. Go ahead.
I was gonna move on to the next section, but you still got some more to talk about the art. Keep going.
Art section overall, I'm just gonna give it my number. I'd go throw a 10. They did that fine. Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty. The game looks good. It runs well. That's all I can ask for. 10.
Good. Yeah,
Works
I've
for
seen
me.
screenshots. I mean, it looks pretty. It looks like
Yeah.
next gen, kind of Borderlands.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
It looks
so, great.
It looks good. It runs well. We love it.
All right. And
Yeah.
so I saw that they released like 2 DLCs so far. Eddie, do you know about these?
No, actually. So this is the part of the episode where we're gonna talk about the game that we haven't even played. So yeah, the DLC. I'm sure you've researched it a little bit for the episode. What do you know about it?
I know that it's they've done it before with like DLC and the Borderlands, but they released 2 DLCs so far, and I checked out the reviews like on the Xbox store, and people are just like review bombing it. They're like, "This isn't even worth it. What the hell is this?"
Jeez.
Like, yeah, I don't understand why. Like they just, I guess, stems from like the actual game itself, because there's not really a lot of games that can save itself with its DLC. If the main game is bad, pretty much the DLC is also going to be bad.
That's right. There's very few examples in which the DLC is like, oh my god, I want to play now. So
Yeah. This Kotaku article I pulled up says that like this whole Reddit, like the whole like Reddit subreddit of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is that like one of them it's like very short DLC. So this one guy said on the subreddit, this thread is already longer than the DLC.
Oh man, that's pretty funny.
And
I
like
like that.
prominent like Borderlands content creator, Killer Six, is that
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
yeah,
We love Killer 6.
Killer Six is awesome. He said that like most like the post release for Borderlands games in the past are like meaty, they have depth,
Right.
it's worth the price, the asking price, but Wonderland seems like it's not worth it. If you can remember, if people could remember like the Destiny 2 when they had like those two small like DLCs, I can pretty much point to this where the DJ and I finished both of those DLCs in under 3 hours, and it was part of it was part of like the $120 edition that I bought, wasted my money on. Don't get me started on Destiny 2 right now, but those DLCs apart, what they were like $15 each, right? MSRP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so $30, 3 hours of like gameplay, and the gameplay sucked. Pretty much skipped over the whole thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's the comparison I'm pulling from here. It's just not meaty enough to ask for its asking price.
I see. Yeah. No, I think the consensus on the DLC. Well, I can tell you from my opinion, so someone who didn't play the DLC, because of the poor end game in this game, I really had no motivation to buy DLC because it felt that they put no effort into the end game itself. So I was like, there's literally no way the DLC can save this game, so I'm not going to spend my money on it. Um, so yeah. I can't give like a number review on the DLC, but I can give a number review on my motivation to buy the DLC, and I would say that's like a 0. Yeah, I have no desire even to play through the full, like to get all the end game just like fully fleshed out. I really have no motivation to finish all the side quests and all this stuff.
Mhm.
Also, one last thing I'd like to talk about in terms of kind of like DLC end game type vibes. Um, there is no replayability factor to this game. There is the it's like the it's like this arena thing that I talked about earlier with the boss rush, but it's like an arena style, like round based, like it's harder and harder as you go along, little fighting thing that you can do. Like you go into an arena and you fight really challenging enemies in a series, and it gets progressively harder. That's the end game, which is really shameful. But it's just fighting in really tiny arenas, and there's no variability, and there's no new bosses or anything. So I just no motivation to play the end game, no motivation to play the DLC. So 0.
0. Okay. And
Yeah.
so, would you recommend this game, Eddie?
Um, if you, I gotta think about this one. If you are a diehard Borderlands fan, I think it's worth a try. Yeah, maybe it's not, man.
Would
I don't.
you wait
Yeah,
for a sale?
I would wait for a sale. The only reason I played this game is because my friend bought it and we're on Game Share, so I could play it for free. um, if it was really cheap, like maybe $15, sure.
Okay.
I think if it's more than 20, 25, I wouldn't do it.
That's how I felt. I was looking at the reviews when it came out this year, and I was like, this kind of seems like a wait for a sale kind of game, because like
Yeah, it's kind of like
yeah.
I would equate it to like the movies that go straight to DVD. Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah,
Well.
I think if I gave it an overall compiling DLC, art style, story, and gameplay, I'd give it like a solid like 4.
Ooh.
It's like it's not horrifically bad, but it's not all the way to the mid section. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Uh-huh.
It's like a 4. Like you get some enjoyment, but it's like it's not enough. It's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
That's
thank
my
you.
final review.
Thank you for that, Eddie, because sounds like I wouldn't play this game if I had spent the money on
Yeah,
it.
probably not.
So now we move on. We're going to talk about a game that I can add more bread and butter to the conversation. Borderlands 3,
Hell yeah.
released released in 2019. Let me just audience. Let me preface this. Borderlands. When that game came out, um, like that whole Friday that it came out, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, did nothing but play that game. I was enthralled. Like, it's that kind of honeymoon phase where you play a
Absolutely.
game and you're like, this game, like it's great, it's perfect, man. I got my money's worth. But then I completely like maxed out the character. I did everything I could in those first 3 days, and I put 50 hours into it, a whole 50 hours in a 3-day span.
Wow. Damn.
I really enjoyed it, right?
Right.
But I guess I couldn't really. I didn't go back to it for a while, but we'll go into our little section discussions about this. So let's talk about the characters. So in Borderlands 3, you can choose from 4 characters: Mara, Mose, Zane, and the robot guy. What's his name?
Fuck. I'm on the wiki,
Black.
so I'm gonna look.
Black.
Black. Yeah.
It's Black.
Hell yeah.
So Amara is a siren, a character with, magical, like psychedelic kind of abilities. You can raise things in the air and fucking throw shit, stuff like that. Then you have Zane, who is a operator. He uses gadgets. He has a clone, right? That's your special ability, using the clone to take damage, stuff like that. Then you have Mose, who operates a fucking mech, like a legit mech. And then you have Flack, who the Beast Master, who controls his pets. Is like the different kind of like wildlife you see in Borderlands. So like one of them's like I don't even know, but you control 3 of those pets.
Yes. Yeah. There's like a little monkey, the spider ant, and then like a skag.
A skag, that's
which is like a dog.
Yeah. So I my first character when I booted that up was like I did Mose. I just wanted to be a mech, and that was fun, because
I did the same one.
Yeah, we both did Mose. That's right. I remember going through that game with Mose. She had her quirks. Mose's dialogue is actually it's pretty enjoyable, like the stuff she says.
I completely agree.
I think she's not all the way there. She's kind of like a Apocalypse Now, if you've seen that movie, how like that main character is like not all the way there, but they're on a mission still. Sort of like I was gonna say Full Metal Jacket, and like that guy, the main guy, but not really. But she's not all the way there, but she does it for the mission. She's crazy. She likes to shoot people and stuff like that. So how about talk about your experience? What did you think of Mose?
So I really liked Mose specifically because she kind of embodies that like toughness that I got from some characters previous in the series. So my first character in Borderlands 2 was Axton, who's like this kind of soldier, like tough guy, but he's like kind of funny a little bit on the side, and like they kind of play with the funny but also serious vibe. And Mose kind of also embodies a little bit of like the childish but also destructive vibe that Tiny Tina brings. So I kind of like that about her. I like her dialogue. It was satisfying. One of the things I loved about Borderlands character dialogue is that it feels satisfying when you're listening to it. Like they have good little one-liners. They're a little funny. They're a little serious. You feel a little cool when you hear it, and like, yeah. So I like Mose. Her action skill is really fun with the mech. The mech is a powerful one. It feels satisfying to use. You're really destructive with it. I love it. Yeah.
Awesome. And my second character that I did, because I went back to it, like I said, I did Amara because I was a siren in the last game. That's what the class type is, and the siren was really fun to play with because It's the main ability that I used with it was you can pretty much force grab enemies in the air, hold them there in a little bubble, shoot at them, and they deal extra damage. And
Yes.
this kind of goes in with the skill trees a little bit. So in Borderlands 3, the skill trees, ah, they have, you can mix match different passive and abilities. So each character
Mm.
can have 3 special abilities per se. Where in Borderlands 2 and previous, there was only, you can only use one. We had one action ability, but in Borderlands 3, you have the option of 3 different ones, which can give versatility in the classes, but it's not what we were used to.
Right.
And in the honeymoon phase, I was like, I pretty much didn't change at all. Like, I pretty much stuck with like 1 or 2 classes, pretty much one class, I think, because you could fill, because there was technically like 45 skill points, because it was base game. You could go to level 50 and you could fill out one skill tree, but then like sort of fill out another. So with that, I really enjoyed how skill trees worked, but it was also disappointing, a different change. What did you think about it?
I actually really liked the. I have no complaints with the skill trees in Borderlands 3. Um, I think they added enough variety to the point where it didn't feel like overly customizable, but there was enough variety for me to have like I could pick exactly what I wanted. So they had they really pulled off the synergy thing. That's what I love about creating characters and classes in the Borderlands series is you can create these really intensely drawn out, thought of synergistic skill sets where like one skill that you have kind of is better because you have another certain skill, and then that synergizes with your ability, and then your ability synergizes with your weapon, and your weapon, I think they really did that well, and I love that. And I think the overall extra little bit of customization and variability that you got in Borderlands 3 skill trees, I think that added another whole big level of depth to it, and I loved that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we can go right into the guns and like the gunplay of Borderlands 3. It's definitely different. You can definitely feel how it's different from Borderlands pre-sequel 2 and 1 for sure.
Yep.
It's a new engine, and so
Yep.
I like how it feels like more than Borderlands 2. Like, I think the feel
Really?
of Borderlands 3, like how you're moving, like they added like a sliding feature, but that's the part of the movement, so we won't go into that. But the gunplay, they did a quality of life improvement where some guns have a different mode on them where you can burst fire, you can
It's
automatic
true. Right.
fire,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. And they added like a couple new different like guns where you have like pretty much like a fucking wrist rocket from Battlefront 2. Watch out those wrist rockets, sort of thing. And you shoot the enemy, right? Then you switch back to your other alternate fire mode, and all your bullets are drawn to it like magnetically. So like just you
Yeah.
can shoot enemies pretty much around the corner. Now I thought that was really cool, but
Right.
that was a good quality of life. And some guns you can switch elements, so it's a fire
Mm-hmm.
and an ice weapon, or it's a slag, not slag, but it's a corrosion and base
Electricity. Yeah.
electricity, stuff like that. Yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I
Right.
enjoyed how the improvements and the quality of life. There's a long list of that in this game. I enjoyed it.
Right.
What do you think?
I think I love the fire mode switching. That was cool. I think that brought a little bit of, like a little bit of extra, like, oh, I personally prefer to fire in burst, or I like to fire automatic, or I like semi-auto. I like that. That's cool. But in terms of like how it feels, that's one thing I definitely don't agree with. I think the gameplay in the early games felt a lot better to me. I think something about Borderlands 3 in the engine, it feels a little too like polished and smooth. I like Borderlands 2 because it feels sharp and kind of like really defined and something like that, it's it's all relative to personal experience, but that's kind of the feeling I get from it. It feels more sharp, it feels less smooth, it feels more consistent, accurate,
Yeah.
pointy. I don't know.
I understand.
Like,
I understand what you're saying. I definitely like how
yeah,
Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequels, gunplay moves and how like you move as a character. And
exactly. Yeah,
you definitely have more like Bob and realistic way of moving in Borderlands 3,
right.
which I do like. I did like that a lot.
Hmm. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so let's move into how since we're on the topic of like still like guns and like gameplay,
Right.
they a one big change in Borderlands 3 was how you well, actually this ties into like the gear also, because there's
Mm.
what am I trying to think of right now? They changed how the guns, the drops and how the types they are. I'm gonna try
Right.
and look this up right now. You keep talking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I kind of know what you're saying. The importance of items was less about the rarity, and it was more about the little um, bonus effect that could be randomly assigned to the weapon. So in previous titles, we had um, different rarities of weapons, and we still have that here in Borderlands 3. But the important thing with the weapons in this game
Found it.
was
Yeah, it's the anointments.
that's right. That's what it's called.
Each
Yeah.
a gun can drop with anointments, and how anointments work is it there's like a handful of different ones they can be on action skill, and your weapon damage is increased, or um sliding or something like that. After you slide, it'll do something different. But it's also class specific. So when you're while digiclone for Zane, your ability with Zane is active, you do more damage, stuff like that.
Mhm. I see. Yeah. So it really was less about the basic functionality of the weapon and more about kind of the dice roll on the anointment. And that to me really took away from the value of getting a legendary. And this kind of fits perfectly in with, with the value of legendaries. They were so common. Oh my God. You
It's
got a
bad.
legendary like probably every 5 minutes or more. Like, it was so frustrating because the value of the legendary was completely diminished. You got them so often, it was almost completely pointless.
And they didn't offer a tier above that, so it's just constant legendaries. Like
Yeah.
it felt like it got demoted down to a blue
Yeah.
or a purple rarity.
Even a green. Like, you got legendaries like literally from regular enemies. It was so crazy. And the reason that that's so frustrating is because you get a legendary weapon. Oh my God, that's the rarest thing in the game. It's not the rarest thing in the game. The rarest thing is to get that dice roll anointment, the best anointment for your class, like getting an anointment that affects specifically your action skill in a very specific way. So the item itself, with all of its cool art style and special weapon effects, that wasn't important. It was the little weird stat boost on the anointment that was important, and that really diminished the value of getting cool weapons in Borderlands 3, which is a real shame.
Yeah, and on that, the loot pool, the like the how they develop the loot pool with enemies. One enemy can drop these types of weapons and this rarity, and they gave like every base enemy the ability to drop a legendary, and it just happened too much because you see so many base enemies in the game. Let's look at the point of the definition of legendary. Legendary is supposed to once in a lifetime.
Exactly.
Arthur's sword stuck in the rock, that is a
Yeah.
legendary sword. No one
Right.
can lift that sword out of the rock except for one person. That is
Yeah.
legendary. And
Yeah.
so in this
It's like
game, it's
it's
keep
a
going.
weapon that's nearly mythical, you know, something that very few people have, or it takes so much work to get, or something like that. You know, it's you know, only the toughest and most persistent players are going to get these really incredibly rare weapons. Yeah.
It's disappointing because now, like in previous Borderlands games, when you got a legendary, you had to it was a dice roll for specific parts on that weapon itself. And now in Borderlands 3, they have the anointments, which the gun you got, there is a chance that the anointment isn't for your class, so it's fucking worthless.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
diversified too much, and now
Mm-hmm.
it's ridiculous. It's lost its
Yeah.
meaning of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really disappointing. So
Yeah.
we can move into the movement. They in Borderlands
Right.
3 they added a slide mechanic, which has been
Yes.
huge in games
Yeah.
now. Like you slide everywhere in
Right.
multiplayer games.
Right. Yeah. I like the slide. I think, and also we get the automatic mantling, which is fun. It makes the movement feel a little bit snappier. Um, so the slide, obviously, there's very few sequences in which you have to use it. It more just feels like a fun little like, oh, I'm cool. I'm in an action movie, like slide, bang, bang. You know what I mean? Like that's cool and fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then the automatic mantling, it makes things feel more scalable. It's a little bit more smooth to move through the arena. That's always interesting. Like Doom has a similar feature where you automatically mantle over walls when you jump near them. Um, but it's something that just makes it feel a little bit more parkoury, a little bit more smooth. Um, but yeah, I like both of those features. They're just kind of basic quality of life, smoothness to the gameplay vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They had depth. They had depth to the maps because um there could be a whole nother level below you, and you could only
right,
access it from sliding, or you can only access an upper level by mounting. So it adds more
yeah,
stuff to the maps and more stuff
right,
to
yeah,
look at, which is great.
yeah. Yeah, you can get more verticality out of the mantling specifically. So a lot of circumstances in Borderlands 2, you're kind of a little bit more on rails. Like you have to go up a stairwell, or like in Borderlands 3, like you can jump up the side of the stairwell, or you can like access the top of a roof or something like that and get like a different angle. So that can be fun. It can make the combat a little bit more in depth as well. The sliding adds a bit of like a pace to everything, or it feels a little bit more smooth to like slide into a room, or like slide under this doorway, or slide behind this dumpster when you're about to get shot by a guy, and again it kills you, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So that always feels cool. It adds some depth to the combat and the maps, which is cool. Yeah, that's what I
Good.
would say.
That's good. Let's talk about how the boss, no, elemental damage, and because that's a huge part of a Borderlands game. They took away slag elemental damage, if I'm right, and
That's right.
they added one new one, then like nuclear damage, nuclear
Yeah, I
elements.
remember that. Good thing you said that, because I almost forgot. Yeah, I really like the nuclear damage, not only because it's very satisfying to like the way they animated the death sequences with the. It sounds kind of morbid for me to say this. Like the way they animate the death sequences for enemies that are affected by the nuclear damage, I think it's really satisfying. The way like the colors, and like the way it kind of like it kind of does like the Thanos snap to them, like they kind of disintegrate. It's kind of interesting. I like the animation. It's got a cool vibe. They do well with the enemy dialogue when they're affected by the radiation. They kind of cough, and like it's kind of an interesting like how it affects the enemies. I liked that a lot. They did well with the way it looks, and the way it kind of sounds, and the way it feels to like use against the enemies and stuff like that. Um, I love the radiation. I think with the rest of the elements, you have your frost, you have shock, corrosion, fire, electricity. I think that's the five. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think they added more, but no, that's it.
No, I don't.
They
I
took away
think that's it.
slag and added
Yeah.
nuclear.
Nuclear damage. Yeah, I think they did totally fine with the elements again. They're really simple and they're easy to wrap your head around. The fire is highly damaging against flesh targets. The shock is good against shields. Corrosion is against heavily armored targets or robots, and then the frost is like a slowing effect, and it can freeze enemies in place, which I think is it's really simple system, easy to remember,
Mm-hmm.
very satisfying to use. So yeah,
Awesome. Now let's go into the level caps. I'm just kind of like
yeah,
knocking these off on the list. So base Borderlands 3 has a 50 level cap, and throughout its post launch content, they increased it by like 3 levels, another 3 levels, 2 levels, where I hated that. Like, it's either go big or go home, right? Why are you
right.
adding 3 levels? All of
It's
this
so weird.
work I did for 50 hours to get to level 50 gear and more is completely worthless, which that is part of the gameplay loop of Borderlands, getting more equipment, a higher level equipment and guns, but it happened too often. Like I was just doing it
Right.
like 3 months later. Oh, gotta get the same weapon that took me like 3 hours to farm. Gotta get it 3 more levels higher now because they increased the level cap.
Yeah,
I'm not
and
against
it's
that.
such a right. I like the level cap increase, but because it's so small, it feels like kind of pitiful. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
in Borderlands 2, for instance, we have base level cap is 50. DLC 1 level increase it by 11 to 61, and then the next one increased it by another 11 to 72. And it also added some bonus levels that you could only get from completing this really difficult challenge. But those larger level cap increases feel more valuable because they came with DLC most of the time, so it gave you like a new section of the game to play it through, and it felt long enough to the point where it felt satisfying to go all the way up and to work for all the stuff again. um but yeah.
That's right. And they just kept doing that. And now I just played it recently. I think the level cap is they raised it higher. It's like 70 now. I'm like,
Amazing.
bro,
Yeah.
they're trying to extend the life, but they're trying too hard. Extend the life of the
Yeah.
game too much. And
Yeah, you gotta really send it with a level cap increase. You got to go by like 10. You got to make it like a whole fucking challenge to get to that next level cap. You know what I mean?
yeah, it
Two
pissed me
levels,
off.
nah, that's nothing. You know what I mean? That's like
And
silly.
yeah, and we can go into like the difficulty. Um, they have they didn't they had this at the launch. They had like mayhem modes, which if you've
Right.
played Diablo 3, they
Yes.
the post game of that they added tiers of difficulty, and those different tiers would add more enemies, more health, or different stuff like that. In Borderlands 3, they did a similar system, except each mayhem is increasingly more difficult, but each mayhem mode will give you a more negative and positive modifiers. Like your like corrosion damage is up 5,000%, but your you can't use grenades, shit like that.
Right.
And
Yep.
it was too random. I'm like, is this a
Yeah.
roguelike game or is this an
Yeah.
RPG?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It was like it felt like artificial difficulty. And for those of you who don't understand what that means, artificial difficulty is basically, rather than making the game more challenging in an intrinsic way, like creating like a new enemy type that has like a different move set or like a different way of maneuvering in the battlefield, or like making it more challenging you for to kill it. Artificial difficulty is when you just make their health higher or make them do more damage or make them, they just increase a stat. So like they're harder only because they do more to you, not because they're different or unique or anything like that. So that's what Mayhem really did for me. And it was such an incredible like slap to the face, because I know they know how to make a difficult game, because Borderlands 2 has very challenging parts. But the kind of artificial difficulty, just like, oh, the enemies have more health and they shoot faster, like, okay, like that's hard, but like it's hard in a really boring way. Like you can make it a lot harder in a unique way. I know you can.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I noticed in that.
They also like throughout its life they like increase how many mayhem levels you can go. So like
Right.
the mayhem level right now I played recently was 11, which isn't any different from, so mayhem 10 is like the hardest one, and it still has those modifiers, but now they added mayhem 11, which is the same exact thing as 10 but no modifiers.
Right.
So I don't really like the mayhem mode. I just wish they,
It's weird.
yeah, they made it weird. It is this a roguelike, which is for those of you who don't know what a roguelike is, it's a gameplay loop where if you die in a dungeon, you start over and you start out from nothing, and now you have to have different enemies spawn, you get different weapons, and it's just different every time. And that's not what Borderlands is, and it sucks that they tied it into the a difficulty. Like if you want the best loot, you have to be on Mayhem 10,
Right.
because if not, it's poo poo and you're bad.
Right. Yeah. I think if obviously the developers at Gearbox, they wanted to make a game that was challenging, but in that effort, they could have made a game that was challenging without just like throwing numbers into the enemies, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty disappointing to see how that turned out. And then, not to mention, when you're on the higher mayhem levels, the same problem that we talked about earlier with the loot rarity, where legendaries are super common. If you're on a high mayhem level, literally every enemy drops legendaries, like every fucking time. Like
Yeah.
it's so insane.
Forgot to mention that it's so dumb. I don't like
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah, like literally, you're not even max level, and your entire inventory is legendary weapons. It's like it's insane.
Right?
Like it took me like years to achieve the perfect inventory on my characters in Borderlands 2. That felt rewarding, but in Borderlands 3, literally, like I'm level 30, level 35, and my entire inventory is already perfect, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like
they appealed to the mainstream too much, because I guess that was what one of the complaints was in Borderlands 2, was like oh, I can't get the harder gear, it's too hard, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
well, you're playing Borderlands for the wrong reasons then.
Yeah. If you want to get the hard, like if you want to get the good stuff like right away, just like, I don't know, go play Minecraft creative mode, like do that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think an alternative that, that they could pursue in the future, obviously I have no pull at Gearbox, so they're not going to fucking listen, but is they could kind of create like a sandbox mode, or like a mode that allows you to just get whatever you want right away and then just play through the game like that. I think that'd be an interesting way of doing that while you preserve the intense difficulty that the real fans, the hardcore fans want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like not, it's not bordering the fan service line, but it's what you built the game on. It's what the fans know.
Exactly.
And it's
Yes.
disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're talking on the topic of difficulty, let's go into the boss fights of Borderlands 3.
Right.
I think the boss fights they were really fun. And I
like them. Yeah.
I had some difficulty even with my decked out legendaries. I still had difficulty killing some of those bosses, and it pissed me off.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's some good, interesting, well designed bosses in that game. I think a lot of them are very intimidating. Some of them have cool development in their character design. Some of them are kind of funny. They did a lot right with the bosses. I think the what they did there was really good.
And there's a couple of bosses that are easy because you just learn their patterns, but some of them are a lot of them were kind of sporadic. You didn't know what they were gonna do. You had to like guess, take the wrong step, and you get fucked.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, I think we talked about everything we could have in terms of the gameplay part of Borderlands 3, and so we'll come up with our different numbers. I say gameplay wise, Borderlands 3, I'd give it an 8.
I think 8's a fair. I think I'm gonna be the devil's advocate. I'm gonna go 7. The loot hierarchy where the legendaries are too common, and then just a little bit about it not feeling as crisp as Borderlands 2 for me. I'm gonna go for the 7. I think it's great, and that's why it's a 7. It's not, 7 is not a bad score. Like that's a good score. So I think a 7 is fair. I like it, but it's not like god tier, top tier territory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. I understand why you would give it a 7.
Right.
Now let's go into the shitty part of this fucking game, the story. It's bad. Even when I was playing it, like, because this you play the game once and then you can play it again in a difficult mode called True Vault Hunter mode. So I played through it twice in that 3-day weekend where I just grinded it, and I was like, what the fuck is this story? Like the first time I played through it, I was like, all right, maybe this has like a good ending, where it sets up the next game, right?
Right.
I didn't like the ending either, and so the whole premise of this story is you're part of the Crimson Lance, which is this group that helps the people and takes out the bad guys pretty much, and these 2 new people show up, right, who do things differently. They're a cult. They're a cult, which is a good idea, except they throw in that these 2, the sister and brother, are like fucking vloggers. The 2 main villains of this game are vloggers. They literally show cutscenes where like, kill a lot of people for us, thanks, subscribe.
They're like social media influencers crossed with cultists, which it sounds hilarious, like when you're talking about it, but it's not hilarious. It's like really, really cringy.
Like, they executed it poorly. Like it's
a good idea.
It is a good idea.
They do not do it well.
It sucks. Like, I can't believe I was going through this and I was like, she's really just fucking say that. Like, I hate this. I do not like this. And we learned further down in the story, spoiler alert, that these two, the brother and sister, they have different powers. The brother can absorb. I think they can both absorb people's like life essence and gain their powers, and they kill off some fan favorite characters to get their powers.
Yeah, we won't spoil that. I think that's too important.
It's too important, but yeah. Those 2 characters literally are like the crux of this game. Why I don't go back and play it, because I have to. I'm forced to hear, like, they added a skip feature down the line of the cutscenes, but like, dude, it's too late.
It's too sad.
You made us watch it, and now it's too cringy. Not as cringe as, well, actually, I wouldn't know. Eddie, is it as cringe as Wonderlands?
Oh, absolutely not. This game's story is like amazing compared to the game. Like,
oh man, that's saying something.
The writing, character development is so horrifically sad in Wonderlands. Like this game, like after reviewing Wonderlands, like I'm kind of looking at the story and I'm like, it really wasn't that bad. Like by comparison, I kind of like this story. it is it is a little it's a little upsetting because it's not as emotionally charged or developed. The villain doesn't feel as evil or menacing or intimidating as previous villains have in the series.
Yeah. And
And
if I'm right,
go ahead.
because the end of the pre-sequel, which is the end of the pre-sequel ties is like before Borderlands 3, the pre-sequel, the end of that was like the most recent event like that leads us to the next game. And Borderlands 3 is pretty much a canon filler game. Like what they
Yep.
set up in the pre-sequel does not happen in Borderlands 3. And I went to the end where they're like, oh, Borderlands 4, something like
Yeah.
that. I was like, what the fuck was the point of this game?
Yeah.
It is a
Right.
filler game.
It
It tells
really
a
is.
story.
Yeah. Yeah. It really doesn't do much. It just it's I think what they thought they could do is they could throw this highly emotional like character loss at us and make us think that it was essential, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, and there's a certain boss fight where they pulled like this the end, or they did like a countdown.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
Holy shit. I
that the
forgot about
bait
that
and
part.
switch. I was like, no way, this is not the fucking end of the game,
Yeah.
right? It
I
can't
was
get it
like,
can't get any
Jesus.
worse than this. And
Yeah.
then it got worse. Like we went to another planet. We learned more. The more we learned was not great. I did not
Mhm.
like that.
Right. I
Personally, what do you
agree.
think?
Well, I think overall, I like I like how the main villains are related to a different character. I won't really go into it why, but I do like that. That's kind of an interesting little thing, but it felt like it was like completely forced. Like it didn't have to happen. It didn't feel like it was an essential thing that needed to happen. So it was cool, but like it felt like a little unnatural. I think in terms of like the story overall, like the characters are developed a lot better than they are in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. They have more personality than they do in Wonderlands. So I really appreciate what they were trying to do with this story, but I think it just kind of fell a little bit flat. Um, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. My general like overview of this game's story, canon filler. And by filler, I mean nothing happens that is integral to the plot. But I said canon filler. There are characters who die and they're not coming in the next game. They're dead. Or
Right.
so we think. But like they're dead.
Yeah.
Or so we think, right? And
Yeah.
they do stuff with other characters. And 4 characters that were integral to Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel, they did not give much or any showtime in this game, which
Exactly.
I didn't like at all. Like
Yeah.
Mordecai, Tiny Tina, who is now a
Yep.
teenager,
Yeah.
um Rick,
Brick.
no, Brick, not Rick, Brick. Yeah, those three did not have a lot of runtime in this game, which you can cut it up to canon filler. They didn't need to be a part of this story because it's filler. They don't matter.
Right.
Like nothing really happens. They help you bust out of like a prison or whatever, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, they don't offer any sort of significance. I think in the other games they did, but here it's like no. They just threw them in for fan service, and it was kind of like a sad attempt at fan service, and that was kind of upsetting.
Yeah.
Because we both know that Brick and Mordecai are incredibly like deep characters, and they have plenty of personality and things that they could have thrown into the game, but they really didn't. They
Missed
also
opportunity.
ignored inclusion of the playable characters in Borderlands 2 other than Maya.
Yeah.
So
What the fuck was that?
that was a little disappointing as well. I think Axton and fucking Krieg and Gage and Salvador and Zero, and I think that's everything, right? Yeah.
Oh, the Necromancer.
Gage, yeah.
Gage.
I
Okay, you
her.
said that. All right, yeah.
They could have easily been as deep of a character as they made Maya in this game, and they really didn't do that. And that was kind of sad for me, because I love to see Maya written as a non-playable character. Um, it was very interesting to see her in a different light, not through to see the world through a new person's eyes looking at her, rather than seeing the world through her own eyes. I think that was a very interesting way of, looking at Maya as a person, and as somebody who's written.
Yeah.
I didn't get that with Axton, and like I have like it's kind of weird to say, but like Axton he was my first character, and I was a young lad. I was 12, 13, 14 when I first started playing the game. And I really like, I had an attachment to playing him, and I wanted to see what he was like as like a person, developed into a real like written character, and I didn't get that. That was a little disappointing.
We got those characters shoveled into DLC, which we'll talk about later. But that was mega disappointing, because it's a DLC. They're not fleshed out as much, and I'll go into the DLC. I did not like that. But in terms of character development, Maya had a great character development.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. She mentors a younger siren, or like potential siren. She was annoying. I didn't like how
annoying.
She was annoying.
Yeah.
But like, you could see where she was coming from.
Right.
But
she was not like, I know Gearbox can write a child character well, and I know they can write an annoying child character well, because Tiny Tina is the most lovable annoying child ever. And they could have done that with this new I don't even know her name, whatever it is, but
I don't even know her name. She's like not that important. I don't remember.
But what I'm saying is, like, they know how to, like, Tiny Tina is annoying in Borderlands 2, but that doesn't like make her a bad character. She's annoying in a likable way. So I think that's really cool, and they could have done that with this character, or they could have chosen a completely different personality, for a young character to have, but they really didn't.
As much as like we can rag on the characters we didn't like, the ones that did bring back, and they included a guy, Reese, from a spin-off Borderlands game.
Oh yeah,
he was cool. I liked Reese. Reese was funny. Zero came back. Zero is a good character. Ellie, that fat fuck, she came back. She was great. I liked her.
Yeah. The only character that they brought back, that they brought back that I didn't like, was Vaughn. I think Vaughn is really funny, but he's mostly cringy, and I hate it. So
he literally turned into Captain Underpants.
Yeah, factual. And I'm sure it was funny in the writing room, but Jesus Christ, it's not funny in the game.
I know they're probably like, this is fucking funny. He's wearing he's in his underwear the whole time. He smells like shit, and he's crazy now.
Yeah, but it was not very well done. I was very sad. So that's okay.
The writing, which we did talk about, but like, I just wanted to say the writing is not up to snuff. It was not as good. It was lackluster. It was disappointing as a Borderlands fan to see how some of my characters that I liked didn't act like they were, I want to say supposed to, but like the development wasn't. It's like they were like, let's just change it so much. Like, let's be different, but they were too different. They strayed from the line, but with a big fucking marker, and just wiggled it all around.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's the writing is nowhere near as bad as it is in Wonderlands, but it's missing some of its like sparkle. Um, it's missing a little bit of its humor.
Yeah.
They still try the humor, but it's not as like fun, or it's not even as funny. It's some of it feels a little more forced. Some of it feels like it's I don't really want it. It's like, oh, like I get what you're trying to do, but it's like it's not really hitting me. It could be my sense of humor. I don't know. It seems like a common belief between most people that the writing is just kind of missing a little bit. That's really all I have to say about the writing. It's not like horrific, but it's not like amazing.
Yeah.
So
I'll give the story a fat 5. It's mid.
yeah, man, feeling the same way. 5.
It's fucking
It's
mid.
not bad, but it's not good. Yeah, it's feeling mid.
And it's only like it's only a 5 because of the characters that came back. It would have been
Right.
without those characters, 2.
Facts.
A fat fucking 2.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. The only points from that 2 would be like the social media influencer enemy is a little bit funny.
A little, like they had like 1 or 2 jokes. I was like, it's pretty funny. Yeah, good job,
You're
man.
like, okay, yeah. But
let's go into the art style and the graphics. The cell shading in this definitely an improvement because it's on it's a new engine.
Yes.
Not much to say here. It looks improved, great, and the characters just look better with cell shading.
Right.
Definitely an improvement.
Yep.
The color,
I would say
go ahead.
Color really pretty, intense, everything I like. Art style, it performed well, it ran well on my console. I give it a 10. Easy.
Yeah, art style, graphics 10. And one thing to note, when the game came out in 2019, it released like 30 frames. It did have some performance issues when
That's
did
true.
launch.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Specifically on the PC side of things, because I didn't really have that much trouble. I think my game crashed once or twice on the Xbox when I played, but PC was horrendous. Like, it was pretty bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They later came out with an update like a year later when the new consoles came out for 60 frames. So yeah, I just want to say that.
Yeah, for me, I didn't religiously play Borderlands 3 until that update, so I can't really speak for poor performance. I always had a great experience with it.
Yeah, I played in 30 frames, and that's how I played the other Borderlands games, so I didn't really mind. But those PC Master Race people were like, this sucks. What the fuck is this? I'm not playing until... Oh, it also launched on the Epic Games Store, so you can't really mod that to help the performance, so that's why people were upset. For 6 months, it was stuck on the Epic Games Store. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Art style, performance. Right now, it's a 10. At launch, I'll give it like a 9.
Yeah, I'll give it a 10. I'll go for that.
And we move into our final section of Borderlands 3, the DLC. There's a lot to talk about because technically there were 2 season passes.
Right.
So season pass 1 was 4 constant rollouts of story-based DLC. The first DLC, if I'm thinking right, what was that? I'm gonna look this up right now.
Handsome Jackpot, wasn't it?
It was the Handsome Jackpot. I like that DLC. That was great.
I do too.
Handsome Jack, great character from Borderlands 2. We won't go into much right now because we'll save that for the other episode. But Handsome Jackpot, it looked great. The guns that came out of it were awesome. The characters in that were pretty funny. There's you remember that Freddy? You remember Freddy from that game DLC?
I do. Yeah.
Freddy was hilarious. I love Freddy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love the first DLC.
I think I love the little back plot of Moxie and Jack's little romance. I think that's always funny because they like beef about it after, and that always makes me laugh. So I like that little thing in the background. I love
the it's not actually, so for those of you who are listening, it's not actually so Handsome Jack had this casino, right, off in space, right, that he pretty much didn't control at all. It was like just holograms. But in this DLC, you experience his doppelganger. What's his name? Actual name? Handsome
Oh
Jack's
shit,
doppelganger.
that is a good question. Let's
Yeah,
see. Hold
I don't know,
on.
but you meet that character, and that character's good because he came back from the pre-sequel, right? He was in the pre-sequel.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
that doppelganger, the ending of that DLC is actually pretty good because it leaves you thinking like, is this Handsome Jack or isn't it? Because
Right.
we
It's Timothy Lawrence. That's his name.
Timothy,
Yeah,
yeah, Timothy,
Timothy.
he's a
Yeah.
great character. I liked him.
Yep. Yeah, no. The Jack doppelganger is hilarious because it's almost like he's the same person, but like with a slightly altered personality. Like,
Yeah, he was forced. His character, he was
yeah,
forced like he was like brainwashed to be like exactly like talk like Jack, but also like he looks exactly like Handsome Jack.
yeah. Yep. That's funny. I like this DLC a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and a trend that we're gonna see is that like the DLC writing is exponentially better than
Oh,
how
so much
the
better.
base game is. And so
Yes.
moving to the second one. What is the second DLC? Do you have it pulled up?
Is it the Guns, Love, and Tentacles one? Is
I
that right?
think that you're right. It is Guns, Love, and Tentacles.
Yeah.
And an interesting. And so the main characters in this is, oh god, the Black Hunter guy. What's his name?
Yeah, it's Hammerlock and his love.
Hammerlock. An interesting thing they did in Borderlands 3. We forgot to talk about Hammerlock.
Yeah,
Fuck.
that's true. We'll
Hammerlock
talk about
is
him a
gay
lot in
now.
Borderlands 2. Yes. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he was always gay, but like
Oh,
now
he
we
was?
know.
Was he in
Yeah.
Borderlands 2? Was he like, was that
I'm
like
pretty
new?
sure because he makes some comments in the
Oh, okay. So
dialogue,
it
I
wasn't
think. Yeah.
prevalent, but like
Yeah.
we kind of
No, it
like
wasn't ever. Yeah.
we inferred, but like now he's like
Yeah.
full like full
Yeah.
flung dude lover, and I like it. I like his character. I like his
Yeah.
character. It's
No,
pretty
he's
funny.
great. His personality is a lot more fleshed out, and I love it. I think his little relationship with Wainwright Jacobs, which is the plot of this DLC, is that it's about them getting married. Which I think is a really cute little idea. Wainwright Jacobs is a good like romantic match with him. Their personalities are very interesting together, and I think Hammerlock's personality being more fleshed out into like a more of a person rather than like a minor character in Borderlands 2. That was really interesting, and I like the incorporation with Wainwright Jacobs, just because he's like this Southern Georgian man. He talks with a big growl, and yeah, and I think that's really cool because Hammerlock is a very posh Englishman, and I think it's fun. I love it.
Yeah, and in this DLC, it brings back a fan favorite character from Borderlands 2, Gage,
Yes.
which they didn't flesh her out because she's the wedding planner of
Yeah.
Wainwright and Hammerlock. I'm like, how did that happen?
Yeah, weird. I don't know. It doesn't make sense for her character to be a wedding planner, but I think it's funny because like she has a bubbly personality and I like that. So I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, the writing for her, I mean, like the premise of it is weird, but like the execution was great. She's
Yeah.
funny. She's like, you could definitely tell that she's fucking crazy, and she's in love with her like her robot that she made. Like her robot's pretty integral in this too, so I like that.
Right. All right, let's see. So then there's what am I thinking of next? Is it the western one?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
that one.
Okay. Yeah, Bounty of Blood. This
Bounty of
one
Blood.
I think is my favorite in terms of world creation, level design, and like art. I think it's like, oh man, I love it. It's
Oh,
so cool.
mhm.
Yeah, there's so you're on this different planet, and you're sort of in this like old western sheriff's bounty type, story, and the Vault Hunter, which the Vault Hunters are the characters that you play as. You're defending this old western town from a gang of outlaws, and they're trying to use this old company that used to like be active on the planet. They're like using their technology to like hurt the civilians and whatever. So this one, like the character, let me figure out what her name is.
Yeah,
The
that
Western
main
lady.
character, she's
Yeah,
actually pretty good. I liked her. She's pretty damn evil.
yeah, yeah. She is cool. I really like. I just remember in the very beginning of the episode, the DLC. She's like, she seems like she's friendly to you.
Mm-hmm.
But like you kind of like you like meet her really early on, and yeah, she's a very very cool character. I really like her a lot. Let me figure out what her name is.
The like the and we forgot to mention like the weapons that came out of these DLCs were fucking cool.
Oh yeah,
And like
absolutely.
the bosses were dope. Better than the
Right.
main game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I think my
Yeah.
favorite one, my favorite like boss is the final one from the third DLC, Bounty of Blood. Remember, I
Mhm.
think was DJ there? I feel like you and I and DJ did that boss fight.
Yeah, we did all the DLCs together. I remember doing that very very specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that was my favorite one because it was a big arena and it felt like the final boss of Borderlands 2. I thought it was really
Right.
cool.
I think her name is Rose.
Rose sounds right.
I think so because I see the screenshot here. Yeah, she's got green hair and this awesome tattoo sleeve. Yeah, that's her. Totally
Oh,
her.
definitely.
Yeah.
I think I'm sorry,
And she
DLC.
has and her the drop you get for killing her is like this cool like fire revolver. It was, you know, like a great boss weapon. Like it felt rewarding and it was good writing, and yeah, DLCs are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And move on to the fourth and final one, the Krieg DLC. What is it actually called?
Hold on.
But
Is it
it's like
this
a play on
Mallow one,
words.
Blacksite one?
No, that's
No, that's
something
not it.
else. That's kind of like the raid boss kind of thing.
Takedown at Guardian Breed? No, that's a takedown thing. No, that's not
Yeah.
what that is.
The fourth
What
DLC
am I
is
looking
like
for?
it's a play on words. I know that. While we look this
It's
up,
not listed.
it's about
Yeah, it's not listed on the wiki.
Who's a Borderlands 2. What's weird in the season pass one, they include the DLC characters from Borderlands 2 in the
Yep.
Borderlands 3 DLC.
Yep.
Kind of funny, but
Right. Yep.
that's in this
DLC.
in this DLC you
Oh,
go
here
into
it is.
what is it called?
Oh, dude, this one. Psycho Krieg and the Fantastic Fuster Cluck.
Buster
Yes.
Cluck. That's the word I
Yeah.
was thinking of.
Dude, I forgot about this one. This one was so cool. I love this. Yeah.
Yeah, you went into the psyche of
Yes.
Krieg, who's a bandit. And one thing about bandits in this game is that like they're fucking insane. Like they're not even human at that point. They're so far gone into like hysteria and the wasteland. Like the wasteland got them. Like
Right.
they're not sane. And so with this character, like Krieg has two personalities: the bandit in him and like the sophisticated actual Krieg.
Yeah.
And you delve into this in this DLC where you go into like both minds, both personalities,
Right.
and you have to like piece together memories, which it includes Maya. Like he's in love with the character in Borderlands 3 and 2, Maya. That's pretty much who saved him from dying.
Yeah, Krieg's inner good guy was like so enthralled by Maya and her powers and how beautiful she was, and he was able to control himself enough to be interactive with her without trying to like fucking kill her or some shit. And that made him fall in love with her, which I think is a really cool story. Like obviously he cannot be saved from how crazy he is, but he's chilled out enough to where on the inside he's tame, but on the outside he's still kind of fucking crazy. Like he says a lot of weird shit. But yeah.
That DLC had really fucking cool weapons, right? And the final boss of that, I think it was Krieg himself, I think, but like with the weird version. But like that was fucking cool. That boss fight fucking rules, kicks ass.
Yes.
One DLC of season pass 1 had a better story than Borderlands 3, and there's 4 of them.
Yeah, dude. All the main story DLCs were incredible. They were like I would even say like a 10. Like
Oh yeah, 100%.
I would absolutely go for it. Yeah, I would
10
say
each
10.
one, absolutely worth it. It's well, you can play the DLCs to get to when you get to a certain level, right? It's like, well, level 15.
Oh, probably. I don't know. Yeah,
So
but no, the DLC, like I would buy this game for the DLC, low key. Like Borderlands 3 is good by itself, but like this DLC is like sick. Like it's sick. Yeah.
and they added a second wave of DLC, Season Pass 2, which is out of the
Right.
blue. They did that because Borderlands 3 sold really good, according to them.
Right.
They added a raid boss, like a Varkin
Yes.
raid boss, which we haven't tried yet. But
Right.
that's cool. Added the raid boss. The raid bosses were huge in Borderlands 2, and they kind of scaled that
Yep.
down in this game.
Correct.
But I'm glad they brought that back. They
Right.
also added a storyline with Ava is this girl's name that was a disciple of Maya. So like this, she's a
Right. Yeah.
siren now. So it's like a murder mystery storyline that you solve. It's like I think like an hour and a half. I think I read before. Like that's cool if you like that character. They have
Right.
vault cards now, which is it's just something to get more loot. It's just something to come back to. You know,
Yeah.
it's replayability is what they're adding. They added more cosmetics, and then they added the designer's cut, which I mentioned earlier that they they like had a system of difficulty where it was similar to a roguelike. Well, they literally added a roguelike mode. It's called
Yep.
Arms Race, and it's an
Right.
endlessly replayable mode, which is what roguelike games are. It's you keep playing over and over again. There really is no end. Technically, there's a final boss at the end, but another playthrough, you could get there a different way. And this is how this is. You just keep getting higher, different enemies. Yeah, it's a completely different roguelike experience every time you play this mode. Which, if you like that, I played it like once or twice. It's cool. They reintroduced Axon into this DLC specifically. Disappointing. They should have done
Yeah.
more with him. I didn't
Yeah, I
like that
agree.
part.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think the little bit of season pass 2 was like just a little bit of extra kind of cherry on top. Nothing like amazing, but like I would say it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also one more thing. They added one new skill tree for each character, which
Oh yeah, I remember that.
it adds
Yeah.
more class variety. Definitely, there's like lots of builds now, but I wish they added another character, which they flat out said
Yeah.
we're not adding another character. We don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
Boo.
Same.
Boo.
Boo hoo. Yeah.
So
All right.
Season Pass 2, I would give 8. No, 7. I give it
Yeah,
7. It's all right.
It's pretty cool,
Season
but
Pass,
like it's nothing
yeah.
amazing.
Season Pass 1, 10, 11.
10.
Keep going up.
Fucking 11.
It's
Yeah.
great, man.
Do it.
Play
11 out of
play
10.
this
That
game
shit
for the
literally
DLC.
it enhanced the game. Like
Yeah, what DLC is supposed to do enhances the game. Prime example. Great story, great weapons, great characters. Bada bing, bada fucking boom.
Yep. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Well, Eddie, thank you for playing Wonderlands, and this concludes our special episode of modern. What did we forget something?
We got to give our final review on Borderlands 3.
Fuck me. All right, it is okay. So Borderlands 3 base game, I would give it a 7. With DLC, it bumps up to an 8.5.
Yeah. I think my overall on the whole game, including DLC, would be an 8. Yeah. It's a great game. It has some shortcomings in the writing and the story, but it's a good game. Yeah.
Great. Amazing. And so now this concludes our special episode of Modern Day Borderlands, our retrospective / review. What do you want to call this? What we did here?
Overview, Borderlands nostalgia session, critique, extravaganza.
I don't know what we did here. We reviewed it. We talked about our experience with it. So I guess it's technically a review, like a retrospective, I want to say.
Yeah. Review, retrospective, critique, nostalgia session. I don't know.
I'll find something to name this episode on. But yeah. Thank you, sir. Closing comments.
I'm very excited to. I think we're going to need a whole episode just for Borderlands 2.
I was thinking the
And
exact fucking same thing, bro.
We're going to need a whole episode for 2, a whole episode for the pre-sequel, and then maybe we can throw in one somewhere else. I don't know. One I don't have many comments on, but we'll talk about that later.
I think we could talk. I think
we could talk about what. Yeah, because that's the beginning. We could do a whole episode on that.
But I think these two we could.
Yeah. These two needed to be in one episode because they. Yeah.
There's much to talk about, but it didn't need a whole episode for each.
No, we definitely needed a whole episode for the other 3 games, though. I would say that's fair.
All right, and so audience, for our next episode, we're gonna go back to the weekly news cycle to take a break because this past 2 were special episodes, and so I like how we're doing these special episodes. It's a break from like the news cycle. There's a lot that happened in the past 2 weeks that we didn't cover, so hopefully something big happens this next week, and there's a lot to talk about.
Hell yeah.
But everybody, thank you for watching / listening, and stay safe out there.
Hell yeah. Goodbye, everybody.